bids that we got regarding the bank loan, and a little bit about the budget after that. So in order to move forward with this, we need to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation. Is that correct, Mr. Porter?
That's correct,
So
and that is
moved.
an exception to the Open Meeting Act.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Made a motion to return to regular budget meeting. Motion, we have a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Okay, we are re-entered into that. Wanted to kind of show some numbers where we are cash balance. I think Bob had sent a copy of that to everybody last week. Give you an opportunity to look at that, and we can talk some questions. Before that, though, let's talk about, we had looked at, this, obviously, after we look at the cash balance, may help us make a decision on this, but we won't do that today, but we want you to look at it. These are the bids from the banks regarding the loan we talked about getting for A-Trip. And again, once we look at the cash balances, we can determine what we need to do. It'd still be my recommendation that we pursue doing something on these loans, to hold what we do have, to get through what we need to get through. But here, these are the quotes that we got from them. So you take a look at those, and any questions or comments you have, any ideas on what you guys think about proceeding at the current time. And you'll notice the lowest rate there, 295. That was there are closing costs and things included in that. And we don't know exactly what it is. They said that.
They said it would probably be between 5 and 10,000.
Right. Okay.
Would not exceed 10, but would probably be in that range.
Well, how come I guess this is First National Bank, why didn't they do the 10-year? Because it don't seem like it's apples to apples.
That is only 5 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
And BB&T only done a 15-year.
We asked for 10 and 15, right? I didn't even realize they only did a 5-year. No, that's what it was. They had it. They said they would have to. They do the 5 and then go for another 5 or something like that, right?
You're talking about an FNB.
Yeah. Let me get.
Actually, 19.6 as well.
Anything else? Questions, comments?
79.6 a year is what it cost.
We can bring this up to the next work session or something if we want to ready to move forward with it. Which again, we'll look at the cash numbers here in a second and give you a better idea. But I want everybody to take a look at that. Is there anything else on that? Questions, comments, criticisms, concerns? Let's get the amortization schedule. We need to get one from First Jackson, and we got one from Regions, right?
That's correct.
And then the next lowest, or the next one, if we get that also. That way, we can compare those.
Around 85,000.
So, that's what you see. This is the balance as of September 30th,
September
2013, right? And this is, there possibly still some changes on these, or this balance should
No,
be
this
good?
this should be good.
Okay. The last thing, like you mentioned, in the new tax fund, of course, there are some things that are paid out there, so that's not actual amount that's left in there. Do you want to talk about the questions on some of these?
Just have some activity in it. Now, some of these funds, although they're not much, the balances are not very high, there's activity coming in and going out each month in those, so.
Every fund that has a 7 before it, that starts with a 7,
Right.
is 99. I think every one of them, none of them are things that we can actually control or direct the funds for. The first one is just our payroll. That one, obviously, and that one we've got to balance out still, right?
That's a clearing account.
Right.
That is the
So-
balance
so-
as of 9/30.
That is one thing that may change, is once we get that cleared out, we still got to get with the auditors and see what can be done. But 725, 730, 740, most of the 751, we basically just hold the money for them. And that's what a lot of these different things are. We're just holding the money for those different organizations.
511, 525, same instance. I mean,
In a sense.
they're earmarked.
But they're county, and we see that, there is cash balance in there. If we get that local law to support cash balance, that helps us out from a cash balance standpoint, but it doesn't help us out on the bottom line, which is the revenue. The local law these numbers don't help us on that negative revenue thing. So we've gotta look at the revenues from those two departments to get that picture. But there is a little bit of cash sitting there in solid waste and county park. Again, the goal would not necessarily be to use that, it would be pull those revenues, excess revenues in. The solid waste may need that so we can keep the truck rotation program going. County park, we're about to spend that money on the sewer plant over there. Jail, we're gonna start clearing that out. We'll start from the bottom up now. We'll fund 199 and we'll start clearing that out every year at the end of the year, making sure that that ends at zero. One of the problems with cash balances we saw when we came in was that jail and EMA, I think, had either a negative or positive cash balance. I think it was positive. But that shouldn't have been the case because, we put $2 million in there. We put $2 million on top of that positive balance and, it needs to keep growing or they're spending more than they need to be. So that's something we're gonna look at a lot deeper this year and make sure that jail and EMA, even though we supplement those, they're gonna zero out at the end of the year.
What is 161? Is that where we reimbursed?
No, that's a question that we have as far as what those funds are for. That 160 was the one that had negative thing when we came into office. 161, I have no idea whether we funded the balance there. I don't know where it came from, and he's got to research that still to figure out what's going on with it.
It
Again,
had to be a reimbursement
it would
Reimbursements for some expenditures.
that came out of the general fund, so it should be able to
and that's what we got to get with
move
the
back to
auditors.
it.
is
Yeah, it
find
was,
out what
I
the-
think there was like two.
Let's just forget them, like you said. But the 120, this tax reappraisal, that's a positive balance, but it won't stay there. It's got to go.
That one actually does. The way that the state requested budget, whatever their balance is, let's say they have a budget of, what, they have 900,000 this year?
Right,
Mhm.
close to-
So, they have a budget of 900,000. Well, they take the cash balance from last year, cut that off, and then they collect the additional amount from the property taxes before they start distributing them. So normally, they're gonna get their whole budget, but if they have money left over, that goes towards the first part of it. So they're never gonna be zeroed out.
Is this amount, what I'm at, is that 120, is that an earmarked fund for the Revenue Commission?
Yes, it
It
is.
does not revert to the general fund.
No.
So, we're actually fooling ourselves if you think we've got a big balance, because
Oh, well, that's,
once
yeah.
we start all
you-
this stuff, we're not gonna have.
Yeah, you can look at the cash balance for our general fund, which is where the problem is, 001 and 112. That's the money that we have really to spend for our general fund.
But
And that's where our
112
problem lies.
How much of 112, is any of that,
If we take A-Trip,
used?
if we take A-Trip off, 250,000, we may have committed something out of that. But if we take A-Trip off, that's pretty much all that we have left. The important thing, 112, the reason that we have money in 112, if you all remember, we cut $700,000 out of the budget early on. A chunk of that came out of Fund 112. So you saw the cash building there. Something I don't understand, and we've got to look at the books on this, is it actually had that balance last year. If you look at the numbers, the balance was there last year, but it doesn't make sense. The money had to be moved or something anyways. We did cut the budget, so that's money there. We also, the reason we didn't have to borrow that money last year to cover the general fund negative, we got $800,000 from payroll that was, not expected. And then you had the $200,000, $200,000+ from the cities and towns in the county for the adjustment that was made. They found that they had underpaid, so they had to pay.
Sure.
or been given.
See what our encumbrances, our earmarks. on
This-
I mean, cause this bottom line right here didn't really tell us what we need to know,
It does if you look, you see that bottom number, it sounds, there's a lot of cash there. Yes, because everything's in an account, we're not gonna bounce checks. But what we gotta look at is 001 and 112. Those are that's the big issue that we have is our general fund, and those are the two that our general fund rely on. So, if, we look at this number, this is September 30th, that doesn't count the deficit. If we spend that whole deficit this year, or if we go over that deficit this year, as we continue to find, I've already found 10 or 11.
That's the way it
Why
has
would
to
you
be
not
by law.
take that
It has to be-
and put that in the
Oh,
general fund?
They can, yeah.
Doesn't have to be. If to reimburse, yeah.
Yeah.
If you take it out of 116, you can only reimburse 116 as the law stands right now. Now, if we get this other law passed, then yes, we can pay for it out of 116 and put it to the general fund. But that's only if we get.
Our ultimate problem is money.
our ultimate problem is revenue.
Why would you
being-
even contemplate paying for a project when you have a money shortage right now, you got an issue? Why would you not take county park and put it in the general fund and absolutely get a loan for the capital improvement out there? I don't agree
Because
with
the
that.
only thing that putting money in our general fund account is gonna do is extend the time that we can run a negative budget.
I understand that, but you're gonna have something. You're gonna be up against the wall.
Well, that's why, I mean, we,
You've got a legitimate project that you can justify financing. You write that check out of that county park and put it up in the fund where you can have a little bit of breathing
you
room.
can't do that. If we get the law passed, yes, we can. But again,
Even
all
without the
that,
law, I don't see why you couldn't.
because that money
You're
is
letting that,
for county park.
I understand. You know, you can write, somebody's gonna have to do it and look into it better than me. There's no reason why you cannot write a check out of that fund to the county, cause we're paying the bill on the we're gonna finance the project.
And we pay it back out of the general fund every year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's gonna happen.
We could borrow from it, yeah,
That's
if you
what
wanna
needs to
borrow
happen.
from it.
You need to have that money available for an we're just creating I don't understand this. I would never pay for a project when you're cash short now. That's why we're having these meetings. I know the project needs to be done, but I just don't understand the thinking of, you know, it's like buying a house. You got $100,000 and you buy a house and then you're broke.
We're gonna buy the house,
Buy the house and
at
find it,
least
pay
put 75%
payments on
of
it.
the cash into it.
Pay payments on it. If you've got a revenue stream to do it,
But are you gonna finance the whole project, along with another project, along with whatever else other projects?
those are asset, I mean, there's a,
They are, but
Viable
you're adding a
projects
lot of
too.
cost onto it also.
you are. But now, we've got a county that is not in debt. We have no debt in this county.
Right.
But, I
And
mean,
debt, in order to grow, you better be, business-wise, you better be prepared to
but
go in
why,
debt.
but why would you borrow money to do capital improvement when you're sitting on $1.4 million that can only be spent for capital improvement? I mean,
That can only be spent for capital improvement.
yeah.
Right.
That's, capital improvement's a road. We could pave another extra road. Capital improvement is a building, capital improvement is whatever we choose it to be. It's a big, wide area. Let's pave an extra road with it, and let's finance county park. It's got a revenue stream to pay it back.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I mean,
What are you gonna do with the $293,000 or whatever it is that's sitting in the county park fund?
it needs to be a check written back to the county if they can do it.
Well,
And put it in the general fund or put it in, 116 to where we can pave extra 2 or 3 roads.
The thing is, we can do that, but, we've got, you know, we'd have to set up, based on my understanding, we'd have to set up some way to pay it back. But why are we going, again, the bottom line problem is a budget deficit.
Yes,
Moving cash around isn't gonna solve the budget deficit.
I agree.
Well, I know, and I agree, but what we're trying to keep from doing, and I think what Mr. Flegel was saying is they don't wanna spend all of our cash and,
And then have an emergency.
and have an emergency and have to borrow.
And go have to, then immediately have to go. Right now, you got viable projects that you can justify, you know, financing. When an emergency happens, you can't justify, you know what I mean? You can't justify buying fuel. You can't justify, you know, buying gravel. You can't justify, that's everyday, that's a business decision.
What was the amount on that?
It's just a
bank?
thought. Now, I'm just talking out loud.
What was the
Yeah, I
amount
see
on
what you're
the bank?
saying now. At first, I didn't understand what you're saying, but I understand what you're saying now.
I just don't want us to
If
get.
they got the capability.
We're headed
of
to being a
streaming.
pickle, especially with the cuts and everything. And if your cash is gone, somebody's gonna make a decision one of these days to go borrow some money.
Well,
And
we're
how you
already
gonna-
planning to borrow money for Atria. I think I agree with it that you can't spend that cash, especially if it's readily available to the general fund, that you can't spend that cash with the possibility that something's gonna happen and we're gonna have to.
And it's just a thought, I'm just thinking out loud.
And I'm 100% on board with the A-Trip thing, but something's like that, which is an investment, we could finance that, but how much cost are we adding? If we add another $500,000 to this $1 million loan, how much extra cost are we adding to this, in the long run?
It's a cost of doing business. Put it up here to the county if we can.
We would, even if we were to finance it, we could do
The park's
that.
revenue's gonna pay the payment.
The way that would work
Right.
is that we would get a loan from the bank to pay for the park project. The park would pay that back every year out of their funds. As far as the cash is there, if we needed it, I wouldn't say we'd do it automatically, but if we needed
If you
it,
needed it, you
then we
need to be
could
able
let
to
the
use
general
it.
fund borrow that money.
That's
That makes
my
sense.
thought.
The,
I'd rather borrow from them as I had to go to the bank.
well, if those 60 lots, the payback to service that debt would take 13 years. If you just done on those 60, lots, but if you take in consideration the entire campground and both lips, it's 2.5 years if you took all the profit off the park. So in 2.5 years, they could pay for that project.
Yeah, I say they pay it, and that's the way you approach it. Pay it off in 2.5 years. Take all the, whatever we have to do, because if we have to borrow the next time, we'll do the same thing.
I would say, I'd extend a little bit beyond 2.5. We could always pay early, but we want to have something
Yeah, I
to
mean,
get with.
whatever, I'm just saying, use those revenue streams.
Here's the big thing too, if we do take that, and this is why I was hesitant against it, if we do take that and borrow the money now, we're obligating more revenue that we need, if we get the local law passed, we need that revenue to balance our general fund budget, but you're gonna be paying on the loan on that. So, But on the backside of that, if we found out the local law did pass, then we could always pay that loan off early and then just use the full revenue stream, so we are covered. Right?
I think it's inevitable that we are going to borrow money to run this county. In the
Not
next,
to run the county,
to make it progress, to do whatever we're
Yeah.
gonna do.
to,
It's inevitable because money has been spent, that's been here for a long time. I just think you should do it on viable projects rather than doing it because it's an emergency and you got to. That's
let's
just a thought.
go over the deficit situation real quick. We put out there 950,000 is kind of been where it's been steady around. The big question is the TBA and lieu of tax funds. It's scheduled, the state's receiving 6% less. Whether we'll get 4% less or 10% less, we won't know till mid-December. But if that happens, we're gonna be well over $1 million for our current budget deficit. We need to be prepared for the things we need to do. I like what you're saying, I understand now what you're saying on the park project, and since we can, are there usually penalties?
The county park can service its own debt,
Right.
and the profits that it makes can service that debt. I wouldn't have a problem with borrowing money to do that project, but when it comes to paving a road, there's no revenues gonna come off of that road, so, you can't justify borrowing money to pave a road, and then.
Unless we're getting 80% of it paid for.
Well,
Hey,
unless, we're getting 15, 20 years worth of paving done
right.
off this A-trip, so, you can justify that the money that we would spend in the next 15 or 20 years can service that debt. So, we have to make sure that.
I just used it as an example. I wasn't talking to take $290,000 and go pave roads.
Right.
You need to have it available for whatever comes about.
Yeah, there may be a company's gonna come in and move in a certain place and we gotta pave a road.
Right.
You should be able to do
And
it.
that's another big thing, is something we have to keep, which one, cash is important for that, we do have a line of credit too, but if we have to commit ourselves, that's another thing, we can't stop doing business. If a company comes in and we need to commit some dollars to it, we've gotta give ourselves wiggle room, and we've gotta be able to do
We gotta
it.
do it.
Cause we can't, not progress
Right.
the phone system. Yeah, it gives us great technology and stuff, but it saves us money too,
How long can we operate? Are we safe till this time next year, or
I don't feel
spring of next year?
We've planned with this A-trip, we plan to go through this year. We could probably, again, if we borrow from different funds, the cash is there, we could make things work out. But I don't feel comfortable going past this year.
I don't think we can go this
So
year.
by the time that we start our next budget project, the process in June, July, we need to have done what we
Oh,
need
yeah.
to do.
Absolutely.
I don't think we can go a full year. Not with what's already signed off on. Do you?
I think we can.
It'll be tight.
because of the acre thing, we are unobligating those funds. Let's take 10 to 15 minutes with you.
Motion.
Motion to recess second.